We're broadcasting at our new time tonight, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Mark Passio, and you are listening to What on Earth is Happening. Today is Tuesday, November 9th, 2010. My website is whatonearthishappening.com. The network's website, revolutionbroadcasting.com. And once again, we're in our new time slot tonight. The show will now be live every Tuesday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. This has been done to make way on Tuesday evening for Bob's show, which is carried live on Revolution Broadcasting and on his website, theylie.com. Bob's show is Truth Be Told Radio. I just had the honor of being interviewed by Bob for the last hour on his show. Thank you so much for the great interview today, Bob. And tonight we're going to be continuing our ongoing discussion for the next 2 hours of the attacks that are ongoing against the body, the physical component of our experience in consciousness. We are going to explore more ways that the mind-body connection is being attacked and attempted to be severed. Because if there is a severing of the connection between body and mind, the mind is more susceptible to attack, and that, of course, further delinks us from the spiritual component of ourselves, of the true self. So we've been undertaking this exploration of this information for the last several weeks, and I decided to extend it one more week before we explore further methodologies of mind control. Again, we said that we were going to touch on about 14 different methods of mind control in the multifaceted techniques of manipulation that are used by controllers, that are used by the dominator world to basically control people and keep them in a prison that they cannot see for themselves because they are under mind control. Call it by whatever name you want: psychological manipulation, the exploitation of ancient psychology because of knowledge that is known about the psyche. You can call it all of those things, and it is indeed all of those things, but by any other name, it's mind control, and that's part of what we do here. We are going to be getting into solutions in later programs, but what we've been doing is basically taking the methods of mind control and exploring them one at a time. The 9th method was food and medicine, and for the last few weeks we were talking about food and all the different ways that the conventionally grown food products basically go to work to destabilize the body and mind. I won't go into a recap of all of that. You can listen to all of those methods, to all of those, all that information about food and what's in our conventionally produced food in the podcast section of my website. If you go to whatonearthishappening.com and you click on podcasts, those shows are all available for free download, and you could put them on any MP3 device, digital music device that you may have, and listen to them at your leisure. What I'm going to do tonight, since I'm extending this topic one more week, is we're going to get into a couple of things that we didn't have time to get into over the last couple weeks, and those topics tonight are going to be flu shots and vaccines that are given to children at an extremely young age, at infant age actually, not even when these children are even 1 year old. And then we're going to get into the phenomenon known as chemtrails. For many people, this is a topic that they will be familiar with. For many people, they may not know about the chemtrail phenomenon, and it's something that everyone should really deeply look into. Last week, we ended the show by discussing psychedelics. We were talking about why psychedelics are so widely demonized. And essentially, I ended the show with a quote. I ended it with a quote by one of the biggest influences in my life, Mr. Terence McKenna. And for people that don't know about Terence McKenna and his work, I cannot recommend looking into this gentleman enough. Sadly, he has passed away. He died back in the year 2000. But his work is seminal, and it is instrumental. It was instrumental to my own awakening. I want to spell his name for everyone so they're very clear about who he is and about finding information from him. Many listeners will, of course, be familiar with Terence McKenna, but many will not be, and I, again, cannot suggest that you look into the work of this gentleman enough. Terence McKenna, T-E-R-E-N-C-E, Terence McKenna, M-C-K-E-N-N-A, Terence McKenna. The quote that I ended with was, "If the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness don't include the right to experiment with your own consciousness, then the Declaration of Independence isn't worth the hemp it was written on." And yes, that's kind of comical, but nonetheless, he's making an extremely significant point here. What these aspects of consciousness that we call psychedelics, that we call entheogens, as I explained those terms last week, what this is about is consciousness exploration. What these compounds, these consciousnesses really are what they are. What they do is they help break down barriers. They break down barriers that our social conditioning has erected in our own minds. They break down barriers that we ourselves have erected in our own minds through not wanting to look at our faults, not wanting to look at the negative aspects of our personalities. What these substances do is they make you confront yourself. And I mean, they really make you take a good look at some of the ways that you are falling short in consciousness, the ways that you are still divided within yourself, the ways that you are still in opposition with your own consciousness. See, the goal of consciousness is the goal of truly becoming aware means that you are bringing the three aspects of your own consciousness into alignment and unison with each other. And these aspects are, of course, our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. And unison in these three aspects of consciousness, this is true unity consciousness within oneself, means that you become a being that as you think, so you feel, and so you act in the world. All three of those things raise to a high degree of awareness and are removed from opposition with each other. And I've stressed this over and over and over again throughout the weeks of this radio show. This is what unity consciousness really is. This is what enlightenment really is, contrary to what many people will try to pass off as enlightenment. If you are no longer in opposition with yourself and your thoughts, emotions, and actions have come into a higher level of awareness for the good, for the true will, okay, that is what enlightenment really is all about. And yes, there is an opposite form of this that is dark unison, dark unity consciousness. I've talked about excuse me, I've talked about this on the show many times. This is something that many people don't like to hear, that they are resistant to, because it makes them uncomfortable in knowing how a specific aspect of the universe, as far as the law of attraction, works. There is something called dark unity consciousness, or dark unison, meaning that someone who is basically committed to the work of evil can come into this form of oneness for the wrong reasons, for the wrong goals, for all of the wrong efforts, the opposite of the true great work. This means that a dominator, a controller, a sorcerer, a dark occultist, call it whatever you want, they do have a way that they think, and then they do feel a certain way about their ideas, their ideologies, and those are in unison with each other. Their emotions do not betray their thoughts. As they think, so they feel, and then their actions do not betray either one of these. Their actions are in compliance, are in unity with their thoughts and their emotions. And this is why they continue to be successful, and this is why we are continuing to be largely conquered, because more of them in this agenda, in this dark agenda, are unified. They are on the same page. As they think, so they feel, and so they act. And that's why the universe is respecting their unity. It will give us what we wish for if we are in unison, in unity in these three principles, in these three aspects of our consciousness. Sadly, they have this form of unity, dark though it may be. And sadly, the human population as a whole does not. That's what this show is ultimately attempting to do, is to bring more people of the good persuasion who are doing the true will and the true great work into this positive unity consciousness. As we think, so we feel, so we act. Psychedelics can be a tool to that end. And again, that's all they are. These are tools. We commune with them, and they help us. Or they could be a detriment if they are used in the wrong context or with the wrong mindset. So if we use them in the proper context, which I talked a little bit about last week, the set and setting, the mindset, and then the external surroundings being conducive to raising awareness, conducive to helping the community, conducive to exploring the deeper aspects of ourselves and our own consciousness, then they will be of great use to us, and they can be termed at that point tools or methods for our personal evolution. And I certainly feel that that is why they are here, that is why they are on the earth. These are natural agents for consciousness exploration. Dominators don't want consciousness to be explored. They want us ignorant of self. They want us ignorant of the laws of nature. They want us ignorant of the natural world and natural law. This is why they will do anything in their power to demonize these substances and attach all levels of fear to them. They will try to tell you that they're highly dangerous or addictive or will make you jump out of windows, etc., and all other levels of nonsense that go along with their fear-mongering and propaganda when it comes to psychedelics. But these things simply are not true. Of course, they can be detrimental if we use them in the wrong mindset. Anything can. Again, Bob, on the show previous to this, when he was interviewing me, brought up the dangers of alcohol. Look at how alcohol is abused. And it can be more dangerous than psychedelics in just about every way, yet it's legal. Look at the additives that are put in tobacco products in this country, causing lung cancer. And again, it isn't tobacco itself. It's the additives and the chemicals and the fertilizers and the pesticides and all the other taste enhancers and the things that make the paper burn slower. That's what will give people lung cancer, not organically grown tobacco. Indigenous people smoke organically grown tobacco practically 24 hours a day, and there's no instances of lung cancer in their culture. Here, it's rampant because of all the other junk, chemical junk that is added to tobacco products in the United States and indeed throughout the Western world. So, again, psychedelics are boundary dissolvers. They help us break down walls in consciousness. They help us explore aspects of our personality and deeper aspects of ourself that we may be resistant in an ordinary state of consciousness to exploring. So, I highly suggest people look into the works of Terence McKenna. He is an incredibly eloquent speaker. He has a very distinctive voice. Some people may find it slightly comical, but absolutely empowering information and there's tons of audio out there by him. There's tons of video out there by him. Just do a Google search on his name, and you will be able to go to town for months, practically, with the amount of information out there on Terence McKenna. I'm going to shift gears now, and we're going to get into the basic topics. That pretty much wraps up what I wanted to say about psychedelics. But let's talk about now a couple of other ways that the dominators and the dominator regime, if you will, in science and medicine and government attack the physical body complex. And two of the most damaging ways that they do this is through vaccinations and flu shots. So let's talk about these two chemical attacks in the next half an hour or so, and then I'll try to switch gears and go into the chemtrail phenomenon. Vaccines are administered practically right out of the womb. An infant's immune system isn't even beginning to develop when this cocktail of chemicals is injected. And there were, it started with a handful of shots, then it climbed into the tens, then into the into the 20s, and now I believe it's something in the neighborhood of over 40 different shots are given to children even before they reach the age of 2. Now, first of all, if people don't just find that figure crazy in and of itself, I don't really understand how what you're thinking. Because if you think that children who have grown up without these things for tens of thousands of years actually need this sludge of chemicals injected into them in infancy to be able to live and carry on a normal life, I think there's something wrong with the way you think, if that's what you think. This would be dangerous for an adult to take in, let alone a newborn child. Look at some of the substances that are in, the chemicals that are in vaccines that we inject into newborn children. And this is where they want the chemical assault to start, folks. They want it to start as early as possible because we don't really understand the long-term effects of some of the things that are being injected into our children. We don't really understand what that will do to the brain as it is even beginning to develop. We don't ultimately understand the long-term effects of what that will do to the immune system. And doctors want to tell people that these cocktails of chemicals that we call vaccines are safe for our children. But I question that as the established wisdom of the day. And I think that people should question that as well and look into some of the things that are in these vaccines and think about it long and hard if this is something that you want to be injecting into an infant baby. Look at what's in some of the vaccines that we give to our children. Aluminum phosphate. Now, aluminum is a metal, and it's associated with a brain disease called Alzheimer's. Ammonium is in vaccination shots. Ammonium in the form of ammonium sulfate. Another form of aluminum called aluminum potassium sulfate. A substance that you hear a lot about in recent times because it is in a lot of the flu shots that are given is thimerosal. Thimerosal is a preservative added to the flu shots and vaccines that we give to children. Thimerosal is essentially a form of mercury. It is actually 50% mercury by weight. That's what thimerosal is. And this is in the vaccinations that your children are getting right now. If you have a newborn child and you vaccinated them, thimerosal is almost guaranteed to be in one of those shots. And it is a form of mercury, a heavy metal that is complete poison. This is a poison by any way you want to look at it. It's not a preservative, it's a poison. Another thing that's added to a lot of vaccines, formaldehyde. Yeah, you didn't hear me wrong. Formaldehyde. You know, the thing that they keep dead tissue preserved with, formaldehyde. This is in the things that we are injecting into our children. One of the things that you will invariably come across when you start doing some vaccine research is its connection to autism. And scientists and doctors in the establishment want to deny this. They want to tell people, oh no, there is no link between vaccination and autism. Well, I would highly suggest that people look into the connection between the vaccination of very young children and the appearance in children in later months of autism. There's a high probability that these are very closely linked. There was a conference that was held several years ago called the Autism and Vaccine Conference. I believe this was hosted by Dr. Rimland, R-I-M-L-A-N-D. His name is Bernard Rimland. You can do a search for this. Type in Autism Conference and Vaccines into a search engine or into YouTube. And there's a video out there. It's very short. Just watch it. It's footage from this conference. And the Master of Ceremonies of the conference is asking people for a show of hands. And the audience is full of parents with autistic children. And he asked them to raise their hands and tell him, by show of hands, how many children there believe that how many parents there believe that their children became autistic after the second round of vaccination shots that they received. And just about everyone's hand goes up. He also asked them about how many of them have documented evidence that this is when this happened. Now, again, you can believe in coincidence theory all you want, and you could say, well, autism, it tends to get diagnosed in children at a certain age, and this just happened to coincide, with this time, this age. But you'll notice that this happened right after a specific round of vaccinations, because these are given at calibrated time intervals. There's a schedule, they call it, that these are given. And almost every one of these parents had children that became autistic after a specific shot was given. Now, I think you have to do some mental gymnastics to say that that's just coincidence. A whole room of about 400 people or more, all simultaneously raising their hands when asked if this is when it happened. There is a connection there, and it needs to be explored with an open mind by the medical community. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I can see patterns when they make themselves very obvious. And I think this is a clear example of a pattern that many people do see, but the established scientific powers that be and the people who write the established scientific and medical literature and teach courses on this stuff don't want to do the thing that they need to do if they're going to be honest with themselves, but yet it is the most difficult thing for anyone to do, and that's admit when they're wrong, or admit that the previous paradigm may not be as correct as they once thought, and that they once put their faith in it so strongly, thinking that it's just this way, this is how it is. They don't want to backpedal from that position based upon evidence that is right before them and say, we may be wrong about this and we need to take a second look at it. Some resources to look into the dangers of vaccinating children from infancy, or at all, really. Look at the connection with autism and do your own research on this. You want to look at Sherry Tenpenny's work, an excellent resource on vaccines in general and particularly flu shots as well. drtenpenny.com, DRTENPENNY, DRTENPENNY, drtenpenny.com, Sherry Tenpenny. A gentleman whose name I mentioned over the last couple of weeks is Russell Blaylock. Russell Blaylock, Blaylock. Just phenomenal information on vaccinations, flu shots, excitotoxins, artificial sweeteners, brain health in general. He's got something called a brain repair formula that helps to bring balance back to the neocortex of the brain, which is the higher functioning, the higher thought center of the human brain complex. This is really what is under so much heavy attack by all of these methods, through the media, through the food that we eat, through the substances that people take into their body, through the media that we watch, through the electromagnetic frequencies that we're basically bathed in constantly. All of these things are detrimental to human health and to human thought processes. And they're methods of mind control. When it's put all together, that's what these are. Another resource that people may have heard about, and I really highly commend her for doing what she's doing, the actress Jenny McCarthy. She has a great website called generationrescue.org. generationrescue.org. A phenomenal resource on vaccines, what's in them, what to do and not do, how to get advice. Just a great website, generationrescue.org. I have a caller on TalkShoe here, and I know that he's been personally affected by this, and he's a friend of mine, and he's got his own show on TalkShoe called Caution, Tinfoil Hat Area. I'm going to attempt to take his call here through TalkShoe. Kevin, you're on What on Earth is Happening. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Good. Okay, good. I want to thank you, actually. I wasn't even going to call in until you actually mentioned Jenny McCarthy, but I'd been looking over at my bookshelf behind me, and I see Louder Than Words sitting there, and it's called a Mother's Journey in Healing Autism, and
yes.
It was Jenny McCarthy's book. She was also author of Mother Warriors. Both books gave my wife quite a bit of comfort in just the idea that she was not alone in what she was going through. And so what you were suggesting earlier, or what you were saying earlier, not suggesting, flat out saying because you know it, about all those people being there at that conference is, it's more true than people can possibly imagine. It really feels like, for me, for someone who has delved into so many different areas. One that sticks out in my head so much, and it really messes with me, is from Brave New Worlds. They used to dump alcohol into the clone decanters where they made children for their futuristic society,
Yes.
into there so that they could make weaker humans, essentially, that are not as fully mentally developed, and then are great at doing like the trash pickup work and so on and so forth, and then do not actually have to get paid a larger wage because they're happier, even they're even programmed to be happier along the way to function as a lower in society.
Yes, they would also deprive oxygen to the brain of the children that they were decanting in Brave New World. That was another method to basically make the brain develop much less slowly than what I believe were termed the alphas.
Exactly.
The people who were geared for a higher strata of society. So it was a pure social biochemical engineering is what it was. And this is, I believe, may be part of the vaccine agenda. It may be outright eugenics, period, just attempting to ruin the health and immune systems of people right out of the womb. And they say it's to strengthen the immune system. I think, I don't think we need to be doing that through chemical means. I think that the food that we eat needs to be our medicine, and we need to understand proper nutrition. Let's start with that. Let's get that right. And then we can move on from there, you know?
Again,
it's
I mentioned
simple.
on one of the last...
Simple.
Yeah. I mentioned even on one of your last shows, it's not always what you actually have to do, but what you should stop doing. Something as small as taking red dye out of, like red 40 specifically, out of your child's diet could dramatically change how your child's cognitive functions go on a normal basis. Because my son, he specifically has had issues then is not allowed any sort of red candies. We had to tell her, like the teachers at school, like if he somehow earns some sort of treat or whatever, that's or gets it from another student, he's not allowed to have it. He just isn't. End of story.
Yeah, children are in such a delicate state of development. This is their most formative time period. The brain is developing, the body is developing, the immune system is developing. We want to keep the chemicals down to a minimum. And this is basic common sense. Why would you want to bombard a child that has just come into the world and is still growing and developing with anything that's non-natural? Why not just get them on the right diet? Get them on proper nutrition, high nutrient value food. Get them off sugary foods. First of all, how about one of the things that children need for proper brain development is mother's milk, breast milk. So many mothers don't feed their children breast milk and just give them this infant formula. Breast milk is one of the things that children need. That's why women have mammary glands, ladies and gentlemen. One of the
I
reasons,
actually mentioned that in your chat also.
Main reason.
They specific women specifically during the first 3 or 4 days pass a large amount of nutrients that act then as passing along the same immunizations that the mother automatically has from doing the same thing from previous generations. As well as, I know this sounds silly, but it has also been documented. I suggest people look into it, but I've had nurses concur with this at doctors' offices on multiple occasions where children would even pick their nose and eat them, and because of it catching various particles of various diseases in there, and they eat them, it somehow consumes into their body the same way the breast milk does, and it acts as a natural immunization. As silly and as disgusting as it sounds, children picking their nose and eating it have been known to actually build up tolerances to various diseases.
Wow. Disgusting though it may sound, that's pretty
I
amazing
know.
if true.
I know it sounds so ridiculous, but it's because those little particles get caught in that area, and then it gets consumed in a different fashion and enters the body in a different way, and it somehow, when the body breaks things down, it becomes a part of who you are. So therefore you are what you eat, and if you wind up eating little specks of various things, it acts just like the immunization does. Like, they give you the actual disease, little particles of the disease.
Hey, the immune
system.
The immune system needs germs and microbes to practice on.
Exactly.
That's just it.
Exactly.
I think George Carlin had a pretty funny skit about that.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. He's a pretty funny guy.
So yeah. Again, the solutions are simple. We need to get back to natural ways of dealing with things, and doctors and pharmaceutical industry specialists, they think that we can improve on nature's game. That's what they are all ultimately about. God got it wrong, nature got it wrong, and we need to refine that. It isn't about living in harmony with nature, it's about conquering it with something that's artificial, that's man-made. And this almost invariably leads to more problems, not the solving of these problems, but it adds other problems onto the list.
Yeah. There's a Michael Elner quote from that I actually originally heard from David Icke, and he had said, just look at us. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, and the major media destroy information, and religions destroy spirituality.
There it is.
And it just boggles the mind that all of these things have been institutionalized to such a degree that my wife, who now just got our son medical insurance, took him to a doctor today to get him checked out. And the woman wound up being a geriatrics doctor because that's where the system sent her for the free checkup. And the woman had no clue about the issues with autism. Wanted to have him diagnosed for ADD, even though literally in the sentence before she had asked the question, my wife had responded to her in another way about saying how he specifically has something called PDD-NOS, and that means pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, is the exactness of that PDD-NOS.
Wow.
She had no clue what was going on because the system sent her with my son to the nearest doctor, who happens to be a geriatric and family practice doctor, and so had really no clue how to deal with my wife or my son, who clearly has special needs.
And what measures are you now taking if it's not too pressing? What types of treatments are you
right
is
now,
he undergoing? Or
he is only going through speech therapy in a specialized classroom at the school, where he is able to do that during the morning, and then during the afternoon he's in a normal classroom with the rest of the first graders.
Now, do you have any suspicions about what may have brought on his form of autism? Okay.
Do
you think it had anything to do with that?
Yeah, I mentioned it on one of your previous calls, and I do believe 100% it's the exact timing that you were speaking of. Like, that room full of 400 or so mothers and so on are right on point. It's really that simple. I am a father of a child who has a variant of autism that developed immediately after he was given his second round of shots, of immunizations. And he was not going to be allowed to go into the school system if he did not get them, is what we were told. So we had to subject him to this in order to get him into a school, which was not the right setting for him, we found out, But it did lead us ultimately to right now, I have to admit, through the school systems, as unfunctioning as they were to begin with, once he was diagnosed, he was then able to get the treatment that he needed and is now well on his way to the point that most likely next year, not 100% guaranteed, depends on how the rest of the year goes, but if he continues well on this current course of progress, he will be in a normal second grade classroom and will be able to function just as well as anyone else in society, and possibly even have a couple of the benefits that go along with PDD-NOS. So I need to stress to your audience that happens to come across this information, not just to get the kid diagnosed early, but get him early in an early intervention type of program in order to get things fixed as early as possible. Because if you don't know what's going on, you may think you've got a fussy kid with ADD, but you don't. You just have someone who has a little bit more will and needs a little bit more direction.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your story, and I wish you the best of luck. And, I hope everything turns out great with Max. I'm sure things will definitely improve. And yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine.
Thanks, dude. Have a good one, man.
Keep the diet improving. That's the main important thing, because that's what is going to really build the brain and really help him to, form all of the cognitive systems that basically help with our pattern recognition. And that's the main key thing to do as far as human health goes. Again, that quote from Hippocrates: "Let your food be your medicine, and your medicine be your food. Take it to heart and put it in practice." Kev, been enjoying your show as well. Kevin has a show on TalkShoe every Friday night at 10 p.m. You can go on TalkShoe's page and search for Caution, tinfoil hat area. Nice bit of humor interjected there into the title, but he talks about a lot of serious topics such as this on his show. And I wish you the best of luck with your show, Kevin. We have another caller from Central Pennsylvania. Here we go. Caller from Central Pennsylvania. You are on live on What on Earth is Happening. What do you have for us?
Hey, Mark. How you doing? You guys actually touched right on what I was going to speak about. First off, I found your show because of Kevin. He's on my Facebook, and I decided to come on and check it out tonight, and I've enjoyed what I've heard so far. But I was going to touch on the same thing. People ask me, why don't I vaccinate my child? I stopped at 6 months. And I tell them, I say, why? Because, it's not healthy for them. It's destroying their brain. The chemicals that are in there are not good for the body. And they say, well, aren't you worried about getting sick or catching any of these things? I say, no, of course not. I say, I let him go out. He plays in the dirt. If he drops something on the floor in the house, hey, pick it up and eat it. You build your immunity by the exposure to nature. And people don't realize that. And it's just, it makes you wonder how they don't once you realize it. And then you have to sit back and go, oh, wait, I didn't realize this either. So it's real hard to deal with people, and that's what I've been learning and experiencing when it comes to discussing vaccines or 9/11 or anything. Whatever it is you're talking about that is not accepted in society because it's like they want right.
It's like they want a sanitized society, a society where you're completely, free of any exposure to anything harmful. And there's no such thing. It doesn't exist. You live in a physical domain. You live in a physical world.
Right. The only thing harmful here, the only things I feel harmful here, we put here. I mean,
that's right.
When the planet was made and life started on this planet, that's what the body needed. And everything we have added. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong that we've developed these things. I mean, we have developed some great things. But then you look at chemtrails, or you look at the vaccines, or you look at the just all the things we do, the bombing we do, DU in our ammunition. I mean, there's just so many things we do that is destroying our own environment. And I'm not a tree. I don't want to classify people or anything, but I'm not a tree hugger or a big environmentalist. I just believe that nature is what was given to us, and that's what we should be respecting and loving.
Absolutely. We're a part of that natural, holistic living system, you know?
Right.
It functions with us in it as one, and we can't look at it as like it's ours to conquer, and we need to constantly change and try to improve upon its design. You know, we need to integrate in with it and live in harmony with it, and things will get better for us. The more we try to keep struggling against it, the more we're going to, you know, basically be like, you know, trying to go upstream against a raging river, and it's not going to work out for our betterment. It's going to be very detrimental to our evolutionary progress.
Well, and another question would be, who do we even think we are to think that we have the right or the ability to control any of it, whether it be, again, back to chemtrails with weather modification? Who are we to even think that we should be allowed to or able to control it?
As if the living weather patterns of the system, of the Earth, aren't there for a reason as well. See, we constantly think that there's no purpose unless it serves us or is providing something good for our agenda, our plans. You know, don't get me wrong. Hey, build a house for shelter, wear clothes for warmth and protection from the elements. I don't have problems with those things. You know, that's a form of technology that serves us. You know, otherwise we'd be sleeping out in the, you know, freezing, you know, sheets of ice rain out in the winter. But you know, it gets taken to an excess and it gets taken to an extreme, and then we get into the things like genetic modification of the things that we eat. You know, and again, things like chemtrails.
Famine that you have going on right now. You know, there's so many different things. And then how about you know, they're trying to get mosquitoes loaded up with vaccines to force vaccinate us. Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm sure you've read that. You know.
Yeah, that's definitely could be one of the next plans of trying to get those chemical cocktails into our systems. Another thing is the chemtrails may be attempting to do this. This may be one of the reasons for the mass spraying over populated areas.
Now, bringing up that, I don't know if I'm going off topic or not. I don't know if I'm going off topic. It is about chemtrails, but I'm actually in Southwest Florida. My cell phone's through Pennsylvania, but I haven't had any down here in about 2.5, 3 weeks. And I've seen other reports on again, some of my Facebook groups and stuff that have said they haven't seen any in their areas for about the same period of time. Now, I had assumed it was because of the elections and the elite traveling around doing their campaigning and all that other junk that they do. But now that's over. Most of them are out of the country at this given moment. Where are they? Why have they... I just don't know if you're experiencing that up there or not.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's true. And this is something we could talk about a little bit. I have not yet been able to determine the pattern of chemtrail spraying. It is something that has eluded me. It seems very random. It is on for a time, off for a time, with no seeming pattern. One thing I do notice is that almost invariably, now this is not 100%, but almost all the time, after a very heavy day of chemtrail spraying, there will be a rainfall very shortly thereafter, often on the very next day.
Right. And now I don't, and I think there's other things where I'm at. I'm in Southwest Florida near an old, it's a runway that is marked private from satellite pictures, and it's marked as a private airport. And I know Bushes used to fly into it when they would go to Boca Grande a lot. That's in that area. And I've always, even before I got into all this, and this is 2-3 years ago, I always thought something was strange, and I always joke, because we don't get rain over this little section of where I live. But we'll get chemtrails all the time. But we never, ever, ever get rain. Like, we'll see the storms coming in from the neighboring town, and it goes right around us. So I've always thought there was something going on there, maybe some kind of, I don't want to say force field, but some kind of modification of that level from the ground that was preventing us from getting rain.
That possibly deflect certain weather patterns or airflow patterns.
Right, because it's really weird because it's like the clouds come at you and then they stop and go around you. We get very minimal rain in my little, I mean like a 10 square mile at the most area. And it's right next to the airport. The airport actually, we could walk through the woods to get to it, but it's all chained off. And it's just, I always thought something was strange there, and it could be a connection with either the chemtrails or Harper or something along those lines, for all I know.
Right.
But I forgot where we were going. I went off on a thing there with that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. We're going to transition into this topic, so I thank you for bringing it up, and thanks for calling in, and feel free to call in any other time. Always enjoy the callers that call into the show. Keep it up. Keep listening. Spread the word about the show. Check out the website, and thanks again.
Thank you. You have a great night.
You got it. Yeah, it's a good topic to transition. Before we do that, I just want to briefly mention a little bit about flu shots, and then we can get into the chemtrail topic, which the last caller has alluded to. And I could start to lay out what that is for some listeners that may not be aware of this phenomenon. Hopefully most people who listen on these networks are, but again, we need to take this information to the wider masses of people and bring this to their attention. Make them look at it, talk about it, and have your information right there. Bring it up in a very logical way where you can show them irrefutable evidence. Even if they aren't ready to accept it at first, you're planting seeds. As a brief aside, a little anecdote, someone that I may be listening to the show right now, I don't know, but I was telling her about 9/11 for many, many years, and we're coming up to another break, folks. Before the break, I was just talking briefly about planting seeds with this type of information to people who may be initially resistant, and this is something that you're bound to come up against if you haven't already. Someone that I know, I won't mention the name of this person, was very resistant about the 9/11 inside job, about all of the information having to do with 9/11 being an example of a false flag. And we'll get into that in depth in the weeks to come in this show. However, I persisted with giving her information for years about it. A little bit here, a little bit there. But I guess the seed eventually sprouted, and a couple weeks back, she told me that she is now thinking that I was correct about the nature of the event and wanted to look more into it. So I gave her some movies and documentaries to research it on her own. So sometimes the truth takes time to work its way into people's psyche. And that's why we shouldn't give up. We need to keep putting it out there. That's what we are tasked with doing, and that's what we will continue to do. So let's look briefly at flu shots, because this is something that's been big over the last couple of years, and no doubt they'll be starting this up again over the end of the fall and the winter this year. Look at some of the things that are in flu shots, the adjuvants, thimerosal in flu shots as well. It's a similar cocktail as in other forms of vaccinations. And another thing that I want to bring up before I get into this is, if they're so effective and they actually do prevent you from getting the disease, what are you worried about people who aren't getting it for? As Kevin said, they wouldn't let his son go to a school where he wasn't vaccinated like this. If the vaccine is so effective and the children are now immunized against this disease, what are you worried about a child not having it? That would just be on them if they developed the disease, wouldn't it? Logically, it doesn't even make sense to force people to be vaccinated. Because if it's your choice and you have it done to you, then you're fine, right? If it's so safe and effective. You don't have to worry about somebody who may be carrying the disease now because you took the shot and you're immunized against it. That doesn't seem to be good enough in their world of logic anyway. But just thought I'd put it out there. There's now mandatory flu shots for hospital workers. This is something that's affected my partner and, our life, because my girlfriend is a nurse and had to go through this, just constant badgering to get this shot, and had to get a waiver signed by a priest. Wouldn't accept just philosophical grounds and health issue grounds that she doesn't accept taking something into her body that she doesn't want. Needed some form of a religious waiver, as if a priest telling somebody that this person doesn't want it on religious grounds is okay. And that's not even our, going to a priest isn't even within our worldview, because we're not religious. Spiritual, yes, not religious. And the gentleman who did write the letter so that she could be exempted from this ridiculousness is a great person, and did a good thing by writing that in, and I thank him for it. However, why should this even need to be done? I mean, this is a basic body ownership issue. Do you own your body or do you not own your body? Whose body is this? Is it my body or is it someone else's body? Well, if I don't want something put into my body, then there's nothing else that should need to be said about it. I don't want that in me, period. You don't even need to know the reasons I don't want it in me. You don't own me. You don't own my body. The end. Good night. It's really that simple. It's a open and shut case as far as I'm concerned, but for some reason, other people don't see it as simply as that. They want to come up with all kinds of justifications why you're endangering someone else by not getting it. Nonsense. Again, if it's effective, you go right ahead, do what you want with your body and leave me alone. So another thing they're coming up with is waivers, making people sign waivers to say if something happens and you're harmed by taking this shot, you can't do anything about it. You have no legal recourse to take any action against anybody. It's no one's fault. Oh, really? It's no one's fault. You take a harmful chemical sludge cocktail into your body, and then it creates something like autism or Guillain-Barré syndrome. That's spelled Guillain-Barré. Check that out. Guillain-Barré syndrome. This is another disease that people contract from taking flu shots and vaccines. It's an autoimmune disorder that basically affects the nervous system. Guillain-Barré syndrome. And this is contracted from taking flu shots in many instances because of all the different additives and adjuvants, the things that kick the immune system into high gear that are added to these shots, particularly this H1N1 swine flu shot. I highly would recommend looking into some of the things that are in it and some of the side effects that can be caused, or I should say the effects of taking this shot. So there's so much research that you can do. Again, I said Sherry Tenpenny is a good resource, Dr. Russell Blaylock, Len Horowitz, Jenny McCarthy, and the list could go on and on. I'll post some of these to the podcast section. Let's shift gears now and get into the chemtrail phenomenon for the remainder of this show. And this will wrap up we could talk about HAARP a little bit too. We could talk about cell phone radiation, because it's kind of connected in many ways with the spraying, at least in some people's minds it is. There may be some overlap there. So the chemtrail phenomenon, now this is spelled CHEMTRAILS, chemtrails. So like chemical trails, chemtrails. What these are aerosol spraying from planes. These are aerosol spray operations from planes that can be flying at any altitude. Now, the first thing is to be able to distinguish a chemtrail from a contrail. A contrail is short for condensation trail. This is essentially frozen water vapor. Okay, this is water. These are ice crystals. Okay, because at very high elevations, usually above, let's say 25 to 30,000 feet approximately, the air is so cold that when a plane goes through it, often from the wingtips, you will have condensation happening. And there will be ice crystals forming as a result of these pressures, okay, from the plane cutting through the atmosphere at this high altitude. What that will create is a trail behind the plane, usually from the wingtips. It could be from the tail, however, okay? And this is a trail known as a contrail. These are small ice particles that eventually then evaporate and become water vapor again. Okay, they go back to a gaseous state. You will see these dispel from behind planes very quickly, often within about 10 to 15, maybe 20 seconds. So you'll see them up there in the high atmosphere. Contrails form only up at least above 20,000 feet. Under certain conditions, even higher, 30,000 feet. Okay? So about 25,000 feet. The trail will dispel quickly. That's how you will know it's a contrail and not a chemtrail. Chemtrails do not dispel quickly. They are persistent. They stay in the atmosphere. And they happen at any altitude because it is a particulate spray that is actually sprayed from nozzles attached to the jet or plane. What you are witnessing when you are watching a chemtrail as opposed to a contrail is small bits of particulate matter. It's not water crystals. These are actual chemicals that are being emitted from the plane from some mechanism, like a spray nozzle or a canister equipped on the plane. These trails that are left behind when these chemicals are sprayed out of the jet then expand, spread out, and are persistent. They linger. They linger in the atmosphere for hours. And they create almost like an artificial cloud bank. So they linger, they spread out, and they begin to obscure the blue sky. So you get like a haze effect or an outright cloud effect. This is how you know you have a chemtrail. Now you can watch them do this. If you just pay attention, when planes are out there, if you see a long, big, expanding trail behind the plane and it lingers, and these planes will often not be flying at a very high altitude. They will be flying around 8 to 10, maybe 15,000 feet. Now here's the thing. Contrails can not even form at that altitude. You do not have the atmospheric conditions that are necessary at those low altitudes. So this is basic aviation physics. You cannot have a contrail, a water condensation trail of ice crystals forming at such low altitudes. It just doesn't happen. Once you get up around 25, 30,000 feet, yes, then you have contrails. Chemtrails are often seen sprayed in great abundance at as low as 8,000 feet or lower. So these are two very distinct phenomena. The chemtrails phenomenon is legitimate, it is real, it is measurable, and it has been proven to be ongoing. Whether people say, oh no, the first link, if you just type in chemtrails, the first link you're going to get back is a Wikipedia link that says the chemtrails conspiracy theory. The connotations that go along with that term, conspiracy theory. People ask me if I talk about conspiracy theories on my show when they don't know about what we do here. And I say nothing of the kind. I talk about things that are verifiable through facts. And I talk about some things that I know from first-hand experience, that I have directly experienced. There's no theorizing going on this show. Now, when we get into theory is why they're doing this. Now, that's what I couldn't tell you that I know for sure. Now we can theorize. Whether it's happening, there is no question. I mean, you only need senses to understand that this is taking place, and being able to employ your senses, make observations, and trust what you observe with your own eyes, And if you have measuring instruments to be able to look at what these chemtrails are comprised of, the instrumentation that you're using to do that. As to whether it's happening, 100% certain. Then we can get into the why. But let's look at some of the things that they are spraying, that we know that they are spraying because chemical analysis has been performed on some of these trails. Samples have been taken. This stuff falls to the ground. It doesn't linger up there forever. These are metal particulates. Again, the theme going back once again to metals, getting metals into us. Mercury in the vaccines and flu shots. Getting soft metals or heavy metals into the body, into the brain. Some of the things that are in chemtrails, aluminum has been shown to be in high concentrations. Aluminum, again, we saw that in vaccines. Why would somebody be trying to get aluminum into the human body? Just think about that fact alone for a few minutes. Aluminum has been connected, again, with Alzheimer's disease. It affects memory and the ability to basically remember details, function in a normal way. The brain capacity, the neural connections start to degrade within the brain. My grandfather suffered from Alzheimer's disease for many, many years before he passed away. And it's a horrible disease to watch somebody live with. They're basically robbed of, their personality, and they become someone who is different, that is not the person that, you grew up around and know. Because essentially it takes memory from them. And they don't remember who they are, who you are, and it's extremely painful coping with that. So aluminum, connected with Alzheimer's disease, and it is sprayed from these jets. And these are big tanker jets in many cases. Some people claim that they're KC-135s. I believe that's an Air Force jet. Some people have claimed that the chemtrails are a joint military operation between U.S. and Canadian Air forces, at least in North America. But these are being sprayed all over the world, in just about every country in the Western world. So, in Western civilization, I should say. So, another metal that is found in the chemtrails is barium. Barium. Extremely toxic when it reaches certain concentrations in the body. Why would they be spraying barium in the atmosphere? It's very curious. There's very different explanations or theories to why this is being done, but that is being done is not in dispute. This is no conspiracy theory. This is measurable. So I'll first give some resources to look into this phenomenon, and you could look into this for years. There is so much information on the internet about this. And there's some good documentaries on it, and there's some great websites. So the person who made me chemtrail aware, the person who first exposed this, at least to my eyes and ears, was William Thomas. And he's been talking about this, to my knowledge, since at least 1997, probably even before that, because I became aware of this phenomenon in early 1997, and it was through William Thomas's website. And this website is willthomas.net, WILLTHOMAS, willthomas.net. I'll link some of these on the podcast page. Another good site that was pretty early on in this documenting this phenomenon was chemtrailcentral.com. That's ChemtrailCentral, chemtrailcentral.com. Check that site out. Another great researcher who's put together a huge repository of information on this phenomenon is Clifford Carnicom. Okay, he has a website called Aerosol Crimes and Cover-Up. Aerosol Crimes and Cover-Up. This is at carnicom.com. I'll spell that. CARNICOM. Carnicom.com. Two more I'll give out for people's further research and edification. EducateYourself.org, just a phenomenal resource in its own right on just about any topic. EducateYourself.org, and this is hyphenated, so educate-yourself.org. And you want to go to the chemtrails section, but if you want to go there directly, it's simply educate-yourself.org/CT. educateyourself.org/CT. And finally, another website to check out is chemtrails.cc. Chemtrails.cc. These are all incredible resources about this phenomenon. To learn more, I recommend checking them out. I'll link them on the podcast page when the show is up in the podcast section of my site. Just recently, a great documentary has been put out by people within the freedom community, and it is called What in the World Are They Spraying? This documentary features G. Edward Griffin and many other experts that talk about the chemtrail phenomenon, what it is, how it is carried out, and what it may mean, some of the possible explanations for it. You know, I think a better topic would have been, why in the world are they spraying? You know, we can do the research to find out what these things are, what this particulate matter is, but why they're doing it is the real question to be asked. So we got to get the what established, but then we need to ask the why. And the main thing that seems to be one of the biggest theories in the answering of the question, why are they spraying this, is geoengineering. Now, geoengineering is a term given to general weather modification, modifying the atmosphere, modifying the way that weather patterns move and flow to create weather or to change weather in specific geographic regions of the planet. Again, I think this is a dangerous thing to get involved in. You are messing with the natural system of the Earth that is a holistic, unified system that we are a part of, that isn't ours to exploit and isn't ours to just do with as we will and try to conquer and control. We aren't the creators of this planet or the creators of the weather patterns that manifest on it. They manifest for specific reasons. There's a purpose behind it. It's a living system. It's not a dead clump of inert matter. Okay? It has to do with the cycle of life. It has to do with life, period, in general. You start messing with that in a way that you don't fully understand what you're doing, and you're going to probably create more harmful repercussions than you do good ones, regardless of what your intent is, because, one, you don't have the full picture of what you're really doing, and I say this specifically to the pilots who spray these things. You want to do something with this information? Give this podcast to some of the unconscious fools who go out and spray something that they don't even know what they're spraying or doing. You think these pilots who get paid to go out there in the military, in the Air Force, or the Navy has planes as well, whatever the case may be, go out and spray substances which you don't really know the reason why you're spraying these. You may have been told one thing and you have no way of verifying whether that's actually the reason why your superiors want these substances in the air. But yet, before a paycheck, you'll go and spray overpopulated centers, something that you do not, absolutely have no verifiable way of knowing what it is you're actually doing. Imagine that.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. And as you can see from the clouds above me, our trip yesterday was successful. So I just figured I'd come clean and let you all in on a little secret. You know how I've been flying around in airplanes lots over the last few months? Well, people often ask me, how can you afford that, Chris? Flying's expensive, and I'll tell you. The government pays me to do it. They actually pay me $10 a gallon to dump chemicals. So, I'm going to explain to you how this works. It's really actually quite simple. So, in the wings of an airplane, there's bladders. And in a normal airplane, this is where the fuel would be. But in this airplane, you see this little access port right here. When you remove those screws, there's a high pressure leakless fitting, and we use that to fill the wings with chemicals. And then this particular aircraft is outfitted with a few different chem spraying options. So let's go for it here. I'll show you the first one. In the engine compartment here, there's some lines that run all the way down. Now this comes from the wings. It comes all the way down through here, in behind this air inlet, and then down into this spray tube. So when we're flying, the engine exhaust comes out here and it's mixed with the chemicals, and the purpose of that is to create some clouds. So you can see there's a diffusing screw installed right there, and these are government supplied. So the next option for spraying, this airplane actually has a few. So this little thing right here, that's actually a high pressure atomizer for a different type of chemical. We're not going to be using that one on this trip because, as you can see, the regular chem is doing its job and making clouds. And you can tell that this is true because you never see clouds unless there's airplanes making them. So if you come down to the wing tips here, there are some flexi nozzles here. Now these flexi nozzles, these can be used for either liquid or solid powder type chem. And the beauty of that is, you know, if you have a job where you just want to seed some clouds, you can use a liquid. If you have a job where you need to genocide an entire province, well, you can install the powder through those and spray. Now finally, we're going to go back here. There's the chem spray certification tag. Where are we here? Where is it? Ah, here it is. Right there. So this is called a fogger. This actually ups our revenue from $10 a gallon up to $40 a gallon, because this fogger here, it disperses the chem so much with the turbulence on the horizontal stabilizer in conjunction with the tip caps here. That causes some turbulence back here, and it fogs so much that you end up with this. I'd say we did a pretty good job last night as we flew into Cranbrook. So, British Columbia, you're welcome. We did a very good job of seeding clouds for you and blocking out the sun, as you can see. So we're stopping climate change. So, there you are, folks. I've come clean, and I told you what the truth is. And it's on video on Facebook, so you can't argue with it. If anyone does argue with it, you can be upset with them and point to the video as evidence. So I guess it's time for me to get back into our airplane. Call sign Charlie Hotel Echo Mike Niner. Cam Niner. Have a great day, everyone. See you on the flip side. And remember, don't kill him. Bury him.
I mean, really? For real? And yeah, this is what people are doing constantly, all day, every day, in just about every country in the world, practically. Going out, accepting money to spray on populated regions. And they'll claim, oh yeah, it's for the good. Oh, you wouldn't want to know what would happen if we didn't do this. You have no idea, zero idea of why you're really doing this. Because your owners would never tell you why they're really doing it. If this was for any altruistic reasons, they would be right there trying to tout it and put it out there to the masses so that they, oh, how wonderful our masters are, that they do this for our benefit. Because look at, what dire straits we would be in if they didn't. We need them. They want to be seen as needed in any circumstance. So if they're hush-hush and secret about this, it has some nefarious, you can be guaranteed to be sure that it has some sort of nefarious purpose that they're not telling you. And particularly, they're not going to tell their lapdog. And yeah, that's what the pilots who do this are. Unconscious lapdogs. Go do this, dog. That's exactly how your owners think of you. And believe me, you have owners, my friends. You have owners. I don't even understand how people like that can look at themselves in a mirror, knowing that they're owned. Knowing that they're a dog on a leash. And yeah, I know that's harsh language. Yeah, you're right, it is. Because how could you even know whether your actions are moral or not? When you've barely looked into the phenomenon, you don't know why. You don't know the why. You don't even ask that question. That's a question that's not even in your vocabulary. That's anathema to the military-industrial complex chain of command. You never dare ask that question. Dog. Right? That question's not in your vocabulary. That's the first thing you need to erase when you take that job, isn't it? Because your owner puts you on that leash and says, you do what I tell you to, dog. You don't dare question me. I'm your owner, and you know it. Selling your soul, my friends. Selling your soul. And I think you got nerve to do it. Nerve. And your children are breathing that crap in. Your children are breathing that crap in. So, people who listen to the show frequently know I get a little bit emotional and tend to start turning up the heat when it comes to particularly people who help and support this control system. and take a paycheck for doing so. I got a family to support. I have to put myself through school. Yeah, you don't need to do none of that by doing this, by spraying something that you don't know what it's doing. You don't know what the long-term health effects are. You don't know what the long-term environmental effects are. You have no idea what the agenda that wants those particulates in the atmosphere, why they want that done. Zero, because you're not in the loop. You're not a higher up. You're just a dog who takes a paycheck to do what you're told, dog. And that's exactly what your owners think. And let me tell you something. That's not even me saying that. I may be using that word just to explain to people that that's really what they are viewed as. I worked with your owners for years of my life, okay? And I'm telling you, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm telling you directly this is what they think of you. This is what your owners think of you. They call you their dogs. They call you their dogs. And this is what people need to know, folks. You want to know what you can do? Start talking to people in the military and telling them that it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that they would fly operations like this and spray it over populated regions. Go have a conversation with your father or grandfather who was in the military and tell them to look at the sky. Take a look up some days when they're spraying this junk over your city and that your children are breathing into their lungs and is getting into their bloodstream and through their blood-brain barrier. And you have no idea why this stuff is being sprayed, and yet you continue to go up in a plane and spray it on populated regions. You got nerve. Nerve. Yeah, so take that message and give it to whoever's in the military doing this operation. And yeah, they'll justify it. I already know. I already know the response before it's given. So I'll lay that out. So when whoever's listening to this and justifying it in your own mind, saying, "Oh, you don't know what's going on. You don't know why we're doing it," and neither do you, is the point I'm trying to make. And I'm telling you, it can't be any good reason if it's kept secret. Good works are done in the light of day. Evil has to be done under the cloak of darkness. Caller from Southeast Pennsylvania, you're on live on What on Earth is Happening. What do you have for us?
Mark Passio, Eric Giordano here in Doylestown. How are you, sir?
Eric G., how are you, my friend?
Oh, man. Just getting through the day, struggling to survive, just like any other man. So, interesting topic tonight. I tuned in. I just got home at like 9:30. Heard you talking about the vaccines. Then you
yes.
Chemtrails, and, you know.
Yes.
Like, I actually, back in 2007, started hearing things about the vaccines, and asked my doctor about the insert in the box, because
yes.
he didn't believe me. He didn't believe me that there was Demerasol in it. And I said, okay, well, where's the box? Because there should be an insert. And right there it said there's Demerasol in it. So, I mean, that's all you got to do if somebody's doubting it. Just get the insert and just show them.
I mean, it shows you that these doctors don't even look at what they're injecting into people. They just, it's rote action to them. It's robotic action. It's just, this is how it's done. We take it, we do it. It's procedure, and that's it. They don't even think about it themselves or even read what they're injecting.
Yeah, well, actually, I had a roommate one time, Mark, that was one of those guys that experiments on animals for the drug companies. And
yes.
I gotta say, man, things people will do for money. I mean, this guy actually liked his job. He thought it was cute to, take little poor innocent rabbits and rub toxic, disgusting poisons in their eyes and give them tumors, and because he felt like he was doing something good.
That's how they always have to sell it.
Yeah, these people like to justify evil to make themselves look better, because these people like to make themselves look better. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of times these people, they'll sit there and they'll tell you that you're bad, and then they'll turn it around and they'll try to make themselves look good.
Right.
Because it's an ego trip.
That's what it all is about. It's about justifying their immoral behavior and justifying ignorant behavior. that's saying, oh, because I don't really know what's going on at the high levels of this agenda or why it's really being done, that I can be excused for my actions because I didn't know. See, this is the whole, following orders excuse and justification, like what was given in Nuremberg. We were just following our orders in the military. People of Germany said, we didn't know that that was actually going on, all the killing of people in camps, etc. And it's just all justification. It's all justification for people not wanting to take personal responsibility for their own actions. And that's why the human race enslaves itself. We could talk about the controllers and their mind control methodologies, and it's important to help people become aware of all of that. But ultimately, it's about using your own will to change your own actions for the true good, not some nonsense excuse and justification that you were sold and that you bought because you didn't want to really think for yourself, but the true good, to actually know what's going on and then take up the side of good. And there is such a thing. There is such a thing as good and evil. I mean, we've talked about that on this show before. People think there's no such thing as moral good and actual evil. And this is a solipsist position, solipsism. This is moral relativism. These are dangerous ideological paths to go down. And this is some of the reasons that people in the military will cite for why they perform the actions that they do in the state of ignorance that they live in. And they are some of the most ignorant people in the world. They ignore evidence to the contrary that shows what they are doing is actually harmful to other people and living beings. And they continue to do it because they say we can pass the responsibility along to our superiors. And that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it, guys and gals in these so-called services. You got to ask yourself, what are you really serving? Why do they call it the service? Are you really serving the people of the country that you live in, or are you serving some other force that you don't even know enough about to understand that you're serving it?
The rabbit hole definitely goes very deep, Mark Passio.
Got anything else for us tonight? Anything else going on?
If I could just throw this out there, that a lot of people don't know this, but there are already, and I know for a fact in Pennsylvania, that they're flying drones over the skies. There is drones. I've seen them. They look like they're high up planes, but when you really look at them, you can see that they're very slow and they're not very large. But they definitely already are flying drones over, no doubt.
Interesting.
Get ready, everybody. Thank you so much, Mark. Take care, buddy.
Eric, thanks as always, man. You take care. Yes, so some of the theories for why these spraying operations are ongoing. Geoengineering or weather modification. Some people think it's outright eugenics. It's outright population control, as the sanitized term for eugenics is known as. And they think that they're doing this to suppress the human immune system, that this is some kind of chemical cocktail that will suppress the immune system and make people susceptible to diseases that their immune system would ordinarily fight off. Therefore, the young and the very old and infirm would be at the highest risk. And, when these chemtrails are sprayed heavily in certain populated areas, there's reports come in of all kinds of respiratory problems, particularly in the elderly and the young. And this is a very strong possibility that this just may be a chemical cocktail that is sprayed over regions to try to make as many people sick and infirm as possible and attack the immune system in as direct a way as possible. I would not put it past the psychopaths that are currently running the show, folks. And if you just dismiss that as a possibility, as a theory of why they're doing that, I'd say you're very naive. Because people don't want to think. I was talking about this with Bob at his show in the hour before mine. People don't understand the psychopathic mindset. They don't understand the person with no conscience. But there are people with no conscience, ladies and gentlemen. Believe it. Know it. That's the truth. There are people who simply do not have a conscience. And don't hold them to the same standards that you would hold yourself, because you are bound by the moral compass called a conscience, called your emotions. There are people who are born with no emotions because they don't feel the part of the brain, the limbic system of the brain that generates the emotional qualities through which we feel the repercussions of our actions that we take to others, is not really functioning properly. We talked about the structures of the brain and what these structures basically make possible for us to feel and do. And there are people who are born with this part of the brain damaged, literally. So they don't feel emotions. In other words, they have no conscience. They could do anything to anyone and not feel a thing. Quite literally. So when you say, oh, people wouldn't do that, no, you wouldn't do that. See, you are holding yourself to a standard of moral conscience that is not present in someone else that may certainly do that and not think twice about it to advance whatever sick, twisted agenda they may have. Finally, another, we talked about this briefly, another possibility is a forced inoculation program where these substances have some of the same things in them that vaccines have, and they're trying to test this as a delivery system for something that they want in the bodies of people for some reason. And it's been speculated that this may also be to activate certain compounds that are in the body with certain electromagnetic frequencies. Metals react to electromagnetic frequencies, like when you put metal in the microwave. So if they got a whole bunch of metals into our system and then activated some frequency that would do something to the physiology, this could be some sort of a super weapon. And that's just another theory. Again, do I know the truth about it? No. Would I like to? Absolutely. Am I constantly searching for more information about it? You betcha. And this is where we can delineate between facts and theory. These are some theories about why they're spraying. That they are spraying over populated centers, and that these are not contrails, that they are particulate metal particles that are sprayed from these jets, is not in debate. Therefore, not a theory. Here we go. Caller from Southwest Ohio, you are on What on Earth is Happening?
Mark Passio, Bob from Cincinnati. This is a powerful topic. Thank you, Mark, for having the courage to put this out there. You are the voice in the wilderness. Most people won't discuss this. Mark, thank you for putting this out here.
Absolutely, Bob. A pleasure to hear your voice. Thanks for calling in.
I had some trouble getting through these numbers, so I went back to the old talk show. But we're running out of
That's
time
fine.
for this show. But thank you, Mark. I think you're hitting on it on the last point. Metals, metals, metals. Why are they getting all these metals? Not only, of course, are they putting toxin in this. That's just a base one. And not only is it happening, ladies and gentlemen, use your eyes. You look up into the sky. Get your face out of the iPod and the iPhone and all the other little devices they want you to look downwards at. Look back up to the skies again, because that's what's happening. They are spraying us. The debate is over. Those who won't accept they're spraying us, we need to move on from their foolishness. They were fools to begin with. Next point. Mark, there is an occult aspect to this. It appears that at the very highest levels of the intel community, a service that Milton William Cooper was attached to, look up Milton William Cooper, he was he was attached to the intel community that is actually spraying us. But they are in conjunction with the pharmaceutical industries. They know we're trying to get healthy. They know we're trying to eat better. They know we're getting away from their fluoride program. You notice that even the dental fluoride commercials don't even touch on fluoride anymore, because they're stepping away quietly. They're saying, oh, sorry, we really didn't mean it. No culpability. Goodbye. Don't remember us with fluoride. We didn't really mean it. But there is an occult aspect to this, Mark. As you know, the black adepts high in the intel communities are involved in the spraying. Mark, the brain cycles at 12 to 14 hertz per second. This is just basic science. or it doesn't cycle at that, but if they can get the brain to cycle at 12 to 14 hertz per second, people become agitated with all this metal in their system. And if you can't relax, and if all you understand is a feeling of agitation 24/7 with all these towers, all these elf towers that they're building, they're not cell phone towers, ladies and gentlemen. They're Gwen/elf towers. Look those up. These are towers that are in conjunction with chemtrails. And as Mark said, these are theories. I can't back these up, but use your eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Look around you at all these towers. Is your cell phone reception any better? Mine isn't. I know it's not for me. So these towers are for a nefarious alternative purpose, and they're tying in with the chemtrail phenomenon. And it's not a phenomenon, Mark, and I appreciate you talking about it. It is a chemtrail crime. They are spraying us. And Mark, I've got a question for you. Here's my take on it, and I know we're running out of time. I believe that, like 9/11, people have a hard time wrapping their minds around the idea that, oh, my God, if there's a crime involved with 9/11 and it's not as it's portrayed, little men from caves climbed into planes and had NORAD stand down for over an hour, and we brought these buildings down flat face per second. They just dropped to the ground. That means that my government might be working against me. Oh, my goodness, I'd have to open up my mind. And like these
90 seconds.
And like these medical professionals, Mark, they are under mind control. They can't even admit what's going on. They can't even admit what their eyes are showing them, just like your previous caller with the insert with skull and crossbones may cause death. These health professionals look at that and go, I never really looked at it. Mark, powerful show. You're the best. Thank you, Mark.
Bob, thanks so much. You brought up some great points there. I definitely recommend that people look into the Gwen
60
towers.
seconds.
Gwen, GWEN, extremely low frequency. HARP, look into HARP. This may be connected with the phenomenon of chemtrails. People have speculated. HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. HARP, that goes on in Alaska. We'll touch on some of these things in future shows. Basically, we're running out of time for tonight. Thanks to all the callers. Thanks for Bob Tuskin for bringing me on his show earlier tonight. That's all we have time for tonight, folks. We covered a lot of ground. We'll get into some new topics next week. You've been listening to What on Earth is Happening right here on the Revolution Broadcasting Internet Radio Network. I'm your host, Mark Passio. The show is live every Tuesday evening
10
now
seconds.
from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see you right here this time next week. Good night, everyone.